Paul, amazing to be with you as always. I always enjoy our chats, and thank you so much for being here. Recently, I picked up a really good book, Selling Through Tough Times by Paul Reilly. And one of the things that I know you and I have chatted about is that tough times can look like a lot of different things. Tough times can be something like a sales slump. Something can be, something in our personal life can be the tough time, being
Right.
diagnosed with a deadly disease. Over the last couple of years, we've also gone through some very uncertain and challenging times. But what I love most about this book is that it wasn't written in or about a pandemic. It's just about how we take a certain mindset to the table amidst tough
Mhm.
times. What have you learned most, Paul, as you've tackled the topic of selling through tough times? What has been the key learning that you'd want to impart for our audience today?
Gosh, what a great question. I can summarize it in one sentence. Tough times are good. All right, tough times are good. That was one thing that I learned throughout the research in this book is researching this book rather. When you look at all the tough times we've faced throughout history, some good always comes of it. Um, Good things are going to happen. The pain we experience during tough times, that doesn't feel good, but the outcomes that we generate are good. The world as we know it today would not exist without tough times. The relationships we have with our customers, with our colleagues, they would not exist without tough times. So tough times are good. Now, the challenging piece, from a very early age, we are taught that tough times are bad because they're painful. We don't want to experience that pain, but that pain will often catalyze positive change. So in the book, there are several examples of companies. Actually, your company, Microsoft, was founded during a recession. I don't know if you knew that or not, but during a recession. So tough times are good, and they build that foundation of resilience and they catalyze positive change. So that's a central theme really throughout this message is that tough times are good. We gotta welcome them. We've got to come in with an open mind, and we've got to embrace that pain because it will lead to positive change.
Pain brings positive change. You bring up a really interesting point in the book as well about this is the first time that a lot of people, specifically some
Yeah.
of this generation, has experienced this level of pain, requiring that resilience and endurance. It's really challenging sometimes when you're amidst the pain to realize that, hey, there's a brighter spot ahead. But you like to say, we should only really be comparing ourselves and our journey against the person we were yesterday. And so I think it's how do we move forward? How do we continue to grow? There's a lot of things that shift, amidst these times. Have you had any particular, because I've got a couple that come to mind, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on maybe a particular learning that you've had amidst pain, your experience amidst the pain, maybe how you could have handled it differently, but what was the better version of you that
Yeah, I have to speak to this from a personal level just because I've grown quite a bit throughout the past tough times we've faced. Carson, you got to remember me and along with several of my colleagues, as a speaker, author, and sales trainer, um, you know, I make a living by speaking in front of groups, by training in live audiences. So, when things when things got shut down, uh, obviously that was a big shock. It was unprecedented territory. And what it really forced me to do was to really dig deep within myself and remember why I do what I do. And I had to call attention to my, personal mission statement, which our purpose statement rather, which is beyond just what we do as a company, but in life, I have my purpose, and that is to positively impact the lives of other people. And after everything started to shut down, meetings were canceled, and I had to dig deep and figure out how am I going to change my business. I had to look at that purpose and say, okay, how does that apply right now? That's still very relevant, even more relevant given the state of the world. So I doubled down on my purpose and what that meant. And for the first few months after the pandemic, it was really about spreading hope within the sales community, reaching out to my clients, offering to get together with their team complimentary just to see how they're doing, offer some inspiration. offering ways to positively impact their lives. So one thing that I've learned is that through any uncertainty, through any fear that you have, through any tough time that you're facing, relying on your principles, what's guiding you at your core is what's going to help you get through. You may not know how, right? You may not know what it's going to look like, but focusing on that personal purpose, that mission, that's going to be critical. That's one thing I've learned along. Gosh, we could spend hours
Well, yeah,
talking about that.
because like you said, I mean, tough times, there's a lot of different things that can be defined as such. I think about 2 times in my career where I unexpectedly found myself looking for work, things that were out of my control, right? And I was ill prepared for it. I didn't spend a lot of time early on in my career doubling down on network. I a close contact and mentor of mine told me a few years back, your network is your net worth. And I wish I had realized that in my 20s. I didn't realize that. I thought that my abilities or my resume would get me wherever I wanted to go. And I was dead wrong. I had to really double down on relationships, but staying central to my purpose. Wanted to help people. I wanted to be, inspirational from a sales perspective, just like you. I mean, guys like you, Mike Weinberg, people that I've respected for a long, long time. I just wanted to be mentioned in the same sentence, right? But what I loved about what you called out, Paul, is seek to serve, servant leadership. There's an element, and what I want to get to in a second is that what value looks like during these times also shifts. So I want to talk about how you hone in on what does value mean to a client, but also staying on the same track of as we seek to serve, that's where we're really going to uncover the relationships that we seek. So if you're selling to someone today, the reality is even when their foundation shakes and the variables look different, it doesn't mean that you can't still have a relationship. It doesn't mean that you can't still find a way to sell through those tough times. How do you recommend, if you're talking today to a seller who's grappling with maybe something as foundational as a recession, something that's going to shake a lot of different things, all the way to just customer budgetary issues changing in light of supply chain issues or whatever it is? What do you tell that seller today? How can they fine tune their approach?
Sure. It's a great question. And I'm going to get a little tactical because salespeople live in the tactical world. That's what we do every day. So you mentioned something like a recession, right? And there's rumblings of a recession, with the inverted yield curve, with inflation, with rates being, hiked up, all that. There's always a recession, by the way, going to happen in the future. It happens every few years. Since the Great Depression, we've averaged one about every 5 to 6 years, we're going to have a recession. That's the average. So it's nothing to be feared. It's just part of the normal business cycle. And those recessions actually represent opportunities. However, during those recessionary times, people freak out. Customers freak out. They do feel like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Are we going to make it through this? And yes, the answer is we are going to make it through it. However, salespeople should tweak their messaging just a little bit as they go through tough times. Customers define value, and their definition of value is the only one that matters. However, our customers are influenced by the current events of our world. So in the midst of a recession, customers will value things maybe a little bit differently. And I'll go through a list of things to remember. Number one, certainty and stability are going to be absolutely critical during tough times. And what happens, there is a cloud of uncertainty when you're going through tough times. People aren't sure what the future is going to look like. People tend to be a little pessimistic just because the present events give them reason to believe that things are not going to get better and all that. So what they're craving is they are craving something that is predictable, that is certain, that is stable, because they're trying to mitigate risk. So this is an opportunity for organizations that are well established, that have a long tenure. They can wield a little more influence right now because they can lead with that message. In the book, I highlight Northwestern Mutual as an example, and in the book, I put a quote that I don't have it right in front of me, but basically It's the president of Northwestern Mutual talking about during all of these uncertain times, there was not a single moment where we could not meet our obligations to our shareholders, our partners, and all that. Pretty powerful statement. But what's more powerful is not the words, it's the context. That didn't come from the most recent president of Northwestern Mutual. It came from the president during the Great Depression, right? And if I'm selling for Northwestern Mutual, I'm going to lead with that. And when I'm talking to partners, I'm going to say, hey, given just the uncertainty of this world, you need a stable partner to help guide you. We've got a 100+ year history of doing this and this and this. Certainty and stability are important. So I would continue with that message. Also, mitigating risk is so important. Decision makers during tough times feel like they have a target on their back. Look no further than the Great Recession, Carson. We were both in the sales arena during the Great Recession in 2008, 2009. You know, people would make decisions, buyers would make decisions, and they would ask themselves at some level, is this decision more or less likely to get me fired? Am I more or less likely to get laid off because of this decision? So as a sales professional, you need to be able to mitigate the risk of changing. You also, at the same point, need to highlight the cost of sticking with what you're doing already and the risk that is inherent with sticking with the status quo. People are risk averse during tough times. So we need to be able to demonstrate how our solution will help mitigate that risk. So those are just a couple of thoughts. Obviously, we need to be supportive as well. We need to demonstrate our support. We need to demonstrate our complementary services that can add value to our customers' business. You know, it's interesting, Carson, think about the solutions that you're providing. Obviously, there's going to be some value-added services and training that go along with what you're selling. But sometimes customers don't take advantage of them because they're too busy. They got other things going on. Well, during tough times, they have more time. They're looking to do more with less. They're looking to develop their employees more. They will become more open to your ideas and opportunities to train in that during those tough times. So those are just a few ideas, a few thoughts on how we can get a little more tactical.
I love that, because what I'm hearing, Paul, is that they're investing, just maybe not in the same way. So they may be investing in employee development or preparation or finding out more of these ways that they can diversify their portfolio and mitigate risk. So what value looks like can shift, but if we meet people and customers where they are, understand that need for security and stability, those are the types of things that we can, still be impactful during those tough times. You know, your goal as a seller is to really reduce or to minimize risk of making a change, making a choice to change, and that element does not change during a tough time. What I'd love to talk about next is, just things you can do to prepare for a tough time, whether it's organizationally, or also whether it's personally, because even specifically, like, look, you have your own business. I work for a large company, but I've worked for small consultant firms in my time, right? I think no matter what it is, the brand of stability, the reputation, consistency, these things are all going to be key as you seek to gain the perception of, hey, this is somebody I want to do business with, tough time or not. And I think you can establish that foundation of transparency and trust during, any time. But especially being able to meet people where they are during a tough time can help you. And so talk to us about how can we prepare for tough times that are inevitable that will come ahead?
Yeah, great question, Carson. And I really view it as a two-prong approach. We've got to prepare mentally, and then we've got to prepare with incorporating the right selling skills. And the mental preparation is critical. Sales has always been a tough profession. When has it ever been easy? Am I right? So we're used to tough times, and I can't think of a group of professionals more equipped to handle tough times than salespeople, because we're constantly operating under a cloud of uncertainty. Are we going to hit our quota this month? Where are the deals going to come from? We're always comfortable in that environment, but we face more rejection during tough times. We're we're not performing at the levels we're accustomed to during tough times. These are just some of the realities, right? There's a drop off in business. So a couple things we need to do to prepare mentally is, number one, we got to build a strong foundation of resilience. And resilience, there's been books written on this. Several of my favorites, Grit by Angela Duckworth, probably one of the best books on resilience ever inked. But I think about, for salespeople, what that means. And oftentimes you can calculate how resilient you are based on your immediate response to adversity. And that's one thing we talk a lot about in this book, is how do you respond to even a mild setback, a minor annoyance? What is your immediate response? And people are generally lumped into three categories. There's people that experience adversity, they quickly give up. I doubt that's anyone within our circle or anyone watching this show. But then there's the group that faces adversity, and it's like they push right through it as if it didn't even slow them down. I guarantee you there's people listening to this that fall into that category, but most of the people listening fall into the third category, and that is the group that will experience some adversity. We pause, we complain about it in some way or another. We call up our colleague and we try to get some sympathy for them, or we want people to feel sorry for us. We pause, we wait it out, and then eventually we push through it. Well, all that self-pity, all that pausing that we do when we face tough times is really just a waste of time. Remind yourself that, okay, when I face adversity, I know I'm going to push through, so why not do it sooner rather than later? And a way to help you build that mindset is to track your first response to adversity. Throughout the week, carry around a small notebook, and every time you face an adverse moment, and maybe it's something stupid like somebody parked in your parking spot, or maybe your shoelace breaks, or you lose an order, or a customer doesn't call you back, or a customer tells you, no, we're not interested. Journal how you respond to that adverse moment. And what you're going to notice is, as you track it, you will begin to self-correct, and that's going to build a foundation. So that's just one tip on building that level of mental resilience. Another thing is that during tough times, don't focus on your performance, focus on your progress. All right? Performance falls off during tough times. And we never want to set the expectation as a sales leader that driving your number and hitting your number and quotas, that it's not important, right? We don't want to set that expectation, but as a sales leader and as a sales professional, focus on the progress that you're making, not necessarily the performance, because tough times can be positioning opportunities. Carson, we could probably go back and forth about all the times that we've positioned ourselves with a client during a tough time that maybe didn't materialize until a year or two later, and then all of a sudden the floodgates open. So focus on that progress. That's the mental side of it. That really is the mental side of it. And then the selling skills. Now is the time to brush up on the basics. Jim Mattis wrote a great book, Call Sign Chaos, and he, in his book, he talks about being brilliant in the basics and how important that is. The most important time, right, is we got to prepare for the tough time. We can't do it during the tough time. You don't want to dig a well when you're thirsty. You want to dig it while you're fully quenched. And so now's the time to brush up on those skills. And tough time and selling through tough times, I'm not reinventing your sales process. What we're doing is we're tweaking it. Yep. We're tweaking some of the things you need to do throughout your sales process to better equip you to manage what you're going to be facing. And we got to get those skills right. That's part of it.
Super powerful, because again, it starts with the foundation, and I like how you started with the mental piece first, because it boils down to response to adversity. You're also kind of alluding to the challenge a bit, right? So you've got the challenge in your book, and I think that's very impactful, because if you look at tracking that, and I'm a big believer in journaling. I like to go back and look at how I reacted and responded maybe to things that I thought were tough times back then, and they were in that moment, right? But to see how I navigated through some of those, what some of my greatest learnings in my life and my career have been whenever I was up against the wall, felt trapped, didn't know exactly what to do. But to your point, you push through, you find that way through. And so I think we have to celebrate those moments of breakthrough. And we got to figure out what was it that got us there. Because I think what's really at the heart of this, Paul, is this is an uncomfortable muscle for a lot of folks who we haven't flexed it. But when you spend a career in sales, or frankly, when you have a lot of experiences, and you go through a lot of tough times, like some of the people you talk about in your book, namely your dad, right? There's a lot of adversity that is faced and resilience that is built up. And it just changes how you approach everything, where some of the things that could set someone else back don't even phase you. It was Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich that said that, typically people will give up at the point whereby, just before success would have been realized. And that's why I think we've got to keep pushing through. I love your focus also on the selling skills and the process. You don't get out of the slump by changing your stance or swing drastically, right? And so I think we've got to make sure that we stay focused on the process and the basics. I loved what you said about don't focus on your performance during tough times, focus on progress. I've had up and down years, right? I didn't miss a quota until I was in my probably late 30s. I was very, very fortunate. But the first time it happened, it was hard. It stung. But I chose to meet that by going in the exact opposite direction. I could have given up. I could have looked at something different, but I doubled down. I doubled down on what my passion was, as you outlined earlier. And it led to additional success and made me better. Better than I ever was. And so I think that's a key element that we want to focus on. I love the concept of journaling. We've got to reinvent ourselves constantly, learning new tools and approaches and assimilating that into our process. And one of the things that I really like too about selling through tough times is there are templates. You've built out templates in the book that, a lot of times sellers can read these books and they're like, oh yeah, it's great. It's a lot of practical advice, some quotes and things of that nature. But no, there are templates and a challenge that will make you better. What was your inspiration for creating those components? Why did you think they were important? And how can we apply them, if I'm starting today?
Yeah, great question, Carson. And I really got to go back to my purpose statement, which is to be a person of value that positively impacts the lives of other people. Here's the reality. When people are facing tough times, they need help. And I view this message as a message that can help sales professionals. So all of those templates that you mentioned, by the way, I've made them available absolutely free on the Tough Timer website. So you don't even have to buy the book to get the templates. You can go to toughtimer.com. You put your email address in, and then you can get these templates. There's a template on how to orchestrate a discovery sales call. There's a template on how to present your solution during tough times. There's a template on how you can better partner with your customers. So there is a template for each of the selling strategies. And the idea is that we live in the tactical world of selling, where many sales books are written with a lot of theory and this and that. And although that's good stuff, it is good to learn that and to understand the theories and concepts of selling. But what's more importantly is connecting that theory into practical action. And that was another reason for these templates, is that you can take them and then here you go, right? Also, you mentioned the 30-day Tough Timer Challenge, which is basically it's completing the daily mental flex every single day. Carson, we've all read books on self-help and having the right attitude and building resilience. But what I wanted to do was create like a workout plan, like you got your physical workout plan that you can use every single day. Why not have one to build mental strength, just like we do physical strength? And that 30-day Tough Timer Challenge template is also available for download at toughtimer.com. And it's a collection of 6 exercises that will help you become more mentally resilient and help you become a better seller.
It's practical application. We have to put one foot in front of the next. And so I can tell you as a seller, I appreciate the templates and the practical application because it's step by step. I wouldn't know how to fix some of the electronics around here if it wasn't for YouTube tutorials. So this is my YouTube tutorial. This is how I can prepare and handle difficult and tough times. Paul, I know we're coming up on time. Anything else that you want to hit on before we would sign off today?
Carson, one thing I would like to share as we wrap things up today, I was asked what's my favorite chapter of the book, and it's the last chapter, just the final thoughts, and I'll tell you what's in it just because I love the message. Several weeks ago, there's a parish priest I was close to, was a big inspiration in my life. He passed away, and I once heard him talk about hope and what it really means. And he defined hope as a deep desire for something to happen, coupled with a strong belief that it actually will happen. And as we go through tough times, it's important to remain hopeful. Things are going to get better, but the true measure of your mental strength, the true measure of your resilience, the true measure of your optimism is not actually remaining positive when things are going bad. It's about remaining hopeful when it seems like there is no hope. So let's remain hopeful. And as you go through these tough times, you don't have to conceal what you are facing. You don't have to conceal the brokenness. You don't have to conceal those things. You can reach out to your network, people in your life, to help you make it through that. And don't view that as a weakness. It's part of your beautiful story. In fact, there's a Japanese art form that really highlights the beauty in the brokenness, and it's called kintsugi. And kintsugi is actually a form of pottery, right? Pottery that is broken. It's actually pieced back together, and the cracks are not concealed. They're illuminated with gold, silver, or platinum to highlight those broken pieces. And many art collectors prefer the broken pieces because it tells a much richer story about the piece of art. And I believe that we're the same way, that those scars that we try to hide sometimes, that brokenness, to me, it makes a better story. And I hope that the painful moments that all these people, everyone's listening to, that they're experiencing, I hope that they're just painful enough to produce that positive change in your life. And then I also hope that you're soon reflecting on the tough days in the brighter future. So, hey, tough times are good, and hang in there.
That's unbelievably powerful. My challenge to everyone, if you're watching today, look for the positive or the learning in every setback, those that you faced and how you got through those, but also anything that you're facing today, because they are there. It's tough to see it, but it does get better. Paul, thanks so much. I always love our conversations. We're going to have to get together again soon for lunch. And thank you so much. Take care.
Absolutely, man. Thanks. Have a good one.
You too.